Local news, Kentucky State Police are investigating an accidental shooting in Estill County that killed a 14-year-old.
The initial investigation indicates the teen was shot by a 13-year-old child. WKYT's Jessica Umbro sat down with a child safety advocate who says there are steps you can take to prevent a tragedy in a story that's new at 4.
While children are not supposed to have access to firearms, sometimes they do end up in the wrong hands. And Safe Kids Fayette County says that there are ways to help prevent a dangerous situation from turning deadly.
We know that we have a public health problem going on in relation to, firearm safety and access and, just kids dying from gunshot wounds.
Sherry Hannon works for Safe Kids Fayette County, a childhood injury prevention program through the University of Kentucky.
We're talking about important conversations that need to occur, and just as caregivers to be able to think through those processes of where guns are stored in homes.
Hannon says preventative measures to keep kids safe include storing firearms in gun safes with locks on them, storing them unloaded, and keeping ammunition stored separately.
Just having some of those preventative things where access cannot be gained is crucial. Kids, hopefully would be discovered trying to get into something before they actually could.
She says even though guns are common in many U.S. households, it doesn't make them any less dangerous when they're in the hands of children.
We need to start having some of those difficult conversations that we may not have had to have many, many years ago.
I'm told that having that conversation with kids can vary depending on if there already is a firearm in the home. But I'm told no matter what, the main priority is making sure that kids understand just how quickly a situation can turn deadly. In Lexington, Jessica Umbro, WKYT.
The investigation into that deadly accidental shooting in Estill County is ongoing. Law enforcement does say that foul play is not suspected.